Hello, everyone. We're back again with the Creative Economy interview series. My name is Moritz Bierling, Director of Research at Exosphere. And today I have with me a particularly interesting individual who's residing in New York and who I have been in sporadic contact with over the past year or so. His name is Dan Russell. He is the founder of KISS Ventures. And I'm going to introduce him a little bit of what he's done so far. Then we're going to go right into the conversation. But thanks for being with us today, Dan.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Dan has founded the X Prize think tank New York City in October of 2014 and has run it until April of this year when he switched his focus over to KISS Ventures, which he also founded previously. And KISS Ventures is a digital and offline emerging technology incubation environment. That's a lot of big words, but he's going to explain to us what that means in a bit, for entrepreneurs. And as a digital incubation platform, it enables education and entrepreneurship for individuals with compelling ideas that are poised to improve humanity. And if you want to check him out, you can visit the website at kiss.ventures. So Dan, let's unpack a little bit what KISS is about and what those 5 big terms mean. Offline emerging technology incubation environment.
Yeah, definitely. So it basically means that I like to create environments where people share ideas that are at the intersection of emerging technology and global challenge. Mm-hmm. So after I had graduated from school, I had started to kind of go through this existential crisis of how am I going to use my business degree to improve humanity and kind of focus on projects that seem a little bit larger than life. Right. I'm as many people as much as people are listening are kind of aware and probably on the same level. I was always fascinated with the stuff that Richard Branson and Elon Musk were working on, and I wanted to build to that level. Part of that was building communities because I had up until that point not had any involvement in those areas of technology. Didn't know one end from another. So right. I had gotten involved around the same time that I started my business, which was actually a marketing agency. I had gotten involved with the X Prize Foundation because of this passion, and I was just always following them. And they had expressed interest in starting up local communities of emerging tech enthusiasts who just wanted to get together on a regular basis and talk about the newest innovations in the world of exponential and emerging tech. So I thought that's awesome. That's a chance for me to at least get a taste of this world and get on the same level as many of the leading minds in space tech and nanotech and health tech and all the right. areas that kind of fascinated me. And so I started that group and it started growing in New York to the point that we started having conversations that were leading to like legitimate business ideas. And so that was around the time that I started getting super focused on intellectual property and people, like what's the step after the step that leads to the business. In many cases it's incorporating and it's starting businesses and it's going down that entrepreneurial route. And so I started codifying that and putting it into the form of a new sort of community separate from the think tank. Which ended up being the community that is now known as Sodality. And when you mentioned the rebrand, that's what we rebranded to. The think tank turned into Sodality, which is a community now basically 100% virtual, but started from the New York think tank that is focused on the same area, so the intersection of emerging tech and global challenge, but from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from the standpoint of the assumption that we want to impact humanity in positive ways through starting companies that adhere to evolved enterprise standards and B Corp principles and for profit but also for good philosophies. Right. And so that was the direction that we took that group. And KISS Ventures has been basically the supporter of both financial and otherwise in terms of time, in terms of resources and my team and so on. I've deeply embedded the philosophy of for good technology into my business, and so Sodality is basically that source of for good, and it's the way that I've incorporated even down to the principles of the business, the core values of the business. The success of one is the success of the other. So we're now actually focusing on 12 different categories of philanthropy over 2017, so one per month. And we got a lot of cool stuff that I like to have the regular conversations about, like what's coming up in the world of technology, and just philosophizing about that stuff. But I also get frustrated at a certain point too, like what's going to happen as a result of those conversations.
Right.
So that's what that group is really there for. It's for people to meet and talk about ideas. And when things get serious, then there's infrastructure in place to protect those ideas.
Right. So what you do is basically you provide an outlet for people who are interested in these ideas, I assume from many different backgrounds, to have conversations about this, philosophize, as you say, and then take it the step further if something seemingly real transpires, right? But like, what kind of people actually come to this to these meetups? Or do
it's all
groups?
sorts of people. I mean, I've had rocket science and astrophysicists to real estate brokers. It's any sort of person who has a passion for this area, because everybody has something to offer, I've found, because you can have a room full of physicists and then one accountant, and the physicists are going to be looking at the world one way and the accountant's looking at the world in a completely different way. And as soon as he opens his mouth and says something, although he may feel like he doesn't know anything about astrophysics or the talk of that particular evening, which was space technology, it doesn't matter, because he ends up coming up with ideas that, unbeknownst to him, and just because he has his own way of seeing the world, are actually incredibly valuable and insightful. And
right.
I love those moments. Like I love seeing people, enter from corners of the world and corners of the professional industry that have nothing to do with emerging technology. Well, as far as we know.
Right.
But they bring something really valuable to the table. So it's all sorts of people that come.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, at Exosphere, we also have seen this phenomenon that the people who come to our programs, our boot camps, and our alternative education academy, they come from very different backgrounds. We've had construction workers, we've had professors, we've had single moms, we've had wives, we've had people who are both in the professional industries or craftsmen, a very interesting mix of people. And what we've seen is that they work together, not automatically necessarily, because they really do come from very different backgrounds, and not just from professional but different backgrounds, but also from different ethnic or cultural backgrounds. And so generally something needs to happen in making the environment conducive to that exchange, right? At Exosphere, we do this by doing community sessions, or community building sessions, where you put people in a room and let them talk, basically with a little bit of guidance, but very little interference, and interesting things come out there, and people kind of get comfortable with each other. But what do you do to kind of make that environment conducive to the exchange of ideas? Do you have special talks? Do you have certain rules of engagement? Like, what do you do?
So I've always kind of erred on the side of open discussions. That's how it started with the think tank, and that's how I've always preferred to do it. I've had a couple of talks where we would bring in somebody to give a presentation on a certain topic, and those are good, but they're also a dime a dozen in many cases. I find that having an open discussion from the get go, usually bringing a couple 6-packs of beer doesn't hurt either. But for the most part, it's about having, like, from the get-go, it's like I'll basically open up the evening and say, or the talk if it's virtual, and say, listen guys, this is what we're going to be talking about, but the conversation will go in all sorts of directions. So it's up to us to find the most interesting path, and every one of you is part of that orienteering process. So if you think about if you think that there's some like gold that we could dig for in a certain discussion, like, it's up to you to help us find that. So it's all open, and like, people are interjecting, and it always leads to a good debate. And I love a good debate, and it always leads to really profound insights. And even on the simplest level, it would be like, somebody could say like, well, did you read that article on X, Y, and Z? And most of the people in the room didn't, and that ends up with us sending out an email afterwards saying, here are a couple of the articles that were talked about during the discussion.
Right.
It's something as simple as that, and then as it can go all the way to the point of, this is an amazing idea that we just came up with together. Let's take it to the next level.
Right.
So
what does
question,
taking it
like
to the next level mean?
Well,
Right,
taking
right.
it to the next level in my mind is starting a business, and more specifically validating an idea. So the first step, like if let's say that there are like 15 people in a room, and then you guys have an awesome, come up with like this fantastic idea. Maybe let's say, like as an example, to create a new type of battery, and there's a couple of people in the room that are actual like battery scientists and people who know what they're talking about. You come up with this excellent concept to like double the life and split the charging time in half of the world's leading battery. And you're just talking about concepts. It's just like, well, what if we tried this? What if we did this? Then the next step is basically, what I would do is say, all right, those in the room who are really interested in taking this further, we're going to have a closed door session. We'll all sign a confidentiality agreement. And if this turns into a company, then we all have joint ownership over the intellectual property. And that turns into, more open and more in-depth discussions that allow for the people in the room to actually, take ownership of it. And there are, other strings that you can attach to it, meaning if somebody, just drops out of the conversations after 3 meetings, then they have no claim over that property. But for the most part, you can take it to the next level by saying, we're going to start a business. Like that's kind of where everything, all roads lead to when you're talking about this sort of stuff, because if you're manufacturing something, you need money to manufacture. If you're going to impact the world in a sustainable way and in a scalable way, then you need to build a business that can operate in multiple countries and that can, pay other suppliers in order to bring a product to market. And businesses are the only things that do that.
Right. So give us an example of a company, if you can, that has gone through that process, and talk a little bit about that.
We had a healthcare company that we brought through late stages of validation, actually, and that was at the beginning of this year. We had a group of, I believe, 7 or 8 people. In the end, it started with about 5 people, and then we brought on 2 or 3 more that were kind of from all walks of life, from artificial intelligence development to actual doctors and healthcare professionals. We had basically stumbled upon an idea of a creative application of artificial intelligence to healthcare diagnostics, and we basically went through several months of validation and research into basically who's the target audience, what's the demographic, is this B2B, is this B2C, what's the monetization model, how long is it going to take to get up and running, all that kind of stuff. And we ended up invalidating it because we did our due diligence, and we said, all right, well, this is a cool idea, but only in this particular niche, and that's not going to scale to the point that we wanted it to scale. So we invalidated it, which is good, because otherwise we would have wasted a lot of time. But we got a lot of people involved in it. We set up, people met, and I know that several other projects actually were born out of that, between the people that were in that original group. I think 2 or 3 of them at a time basically said, well, we could do this and then go in this different direction that we had originally planned on. So those 2 or 3 people are now working on a new project.
Right, that's very cool. Did you hear about this company called Lemonade.ai? I believe they recently came out and are doing insurance with AI, where they promise to pay out in 3 minutes or something like that.
I haven't heard of that. No, Lemonade.ai. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, very interesting. Like they are doing something similar, where they're applying AI to the insurance industry and making the process very frictionless for people to engage in. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities currently in using AI and combining it with something. I remember when I interviewed the founder of X.ai, the smart scheduling assistant, he basically said, yeah, basically lots of people are actually right now taking AI and adding it to everything everything you imagine out there. And I think Kevin Kelly, the editor of Wired magazine, said that the business plan of the next 10,000 startups is easy to predict. Take X and add AI. So do you see a lot of people or a lot of groups going in that direction, trying to do something in that area?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, you almost every conversation that I have, either in Sodality or just in general about emerging tech, probably 8 out of 10 of them end in a conversation around artificial intelligence. It's either that or space technology, like one of the two.
Right.
And that might just be my area of interest, kind of biasing the conversation in that direction. But for the most part, yeah, there's an enormous amount of potential in that area, because the applications are seemingly endless.
Right. Yeah, it seems like it's a new dimension to the information revolution, where with a chip we unlocked a lot of potential that was previously hidden, and now with AI we're kind of doing the same to the information era itself.
Yeah, we're taking advantage.
I want to change the conversation. Right. I want to change the conversation a little bit into the more personal stuff, because what is very interesting to our viewers is how people get to where they are right now. And with you already mentioned that you had a business degree, and then you thought about how to make that into something that helps you bring the change that you want to see and use technology. So how did you really manage to do that? Like you said, you already mentioned that you tried to volunteer with the X Prize Foundation, and then that led to something. Can you go into a little bit more of a detail there?
Yeah, sure. So after I graduated, that was in 2013. I graduated from college. I immediately decided that I wanted to start a business, but I didn't start a business immediately. Well, my first business was in college, and that was just like an online textbook business, and that kind of gave me some foundations in digital marketing and so on. But my first real business, I didn't start until after I partnered with an existing startup in New Jersey. And I had grown up in the Northeast my whole life, and so I was very kind of used to that environment. And I think and talk fast, so like I fit into the New York scene very well. But for the most part, I was attracted to it because it was early stage. I got along with the founder really well, and we ended up partnering, and we basically grew that business to 7 figures and beyond relatively quickly. And I got a lot of exposure to the marketing world, and so I basically, you do what you know and do what you're good at. So I started an agency of my own, worked on that in parallel with this startup, and once the agency reached the point where it needed my full-time focus, I started that, and the agency was Kiss Ventures. I started to. I basically, ended the partnership with that startup and focused exclusively on Kiss. Before that point was where I got involved with X Prize. And how that story basically plays out is that I was on X Prize's mailing list like anybody else. And at one point they had started an initiative called the Vanguards, and this was attached to one of their prizes that they were launching. So that was like a private email segment that they were sending to kind of like first responders in the X Prize community, essentially. And so they had kind of opened up the conversation about starting up these local communities that were like codenamed think tanks. So apparently I was one of 2 people that responded saying, let's do this, let's set it up. And so I started working with X Prize's community organizer at the time. And along with one other guy in Orange County, California, we basically built the foundations for these groups, which would be known as X Prize think tanks. Set up meetup groups, organized weekly meetups, and started to talk about how these communities are going to be run and led and develop and grow. Once that started to gain traction, and now there are several dozen groups, think tanks around the world, I started encountering those conversations that started to gain a little bit more momentum. I brought on some co-organizers with the think tank, started bringing in, speakers and people who were, kind of figureheads in the New York City tech community, and rebranded at that point because the intellectual property, worries and that kind of stuff. So once we did that, and by rebranding, I basically mean like we dropped the X Prize name and adopted the name of our own. Sodality was chosen because it basically means a group of people with a shared belief, and in this case, it's a belief that technology can improve humanity. So that's really the premise upon which a lot of our discussions are based. So right. I was trying to figure out, very early on how me running a marketing agency could actually, contribute to the betterment of humanity in the long run. Because I want to be doing, as I mentioned before, I want to be doing what Richard Branson and Elon Musk are doing, and I have a very clear and decisive plan of how that extends from a marketing agency. I mean, Virgin started as a record company, doing the same thing as any other record company. So like I've got that plan. Sodality is one of the keys to making that happen, because I know that, having a strong and loyal community, and knowing that there are people who are just as committed as me to the betterment of humanity and to the development of exponential technology is really important to not only business growth from the KISS side, but also just the extrapolation of ideas and the sharing of insight and innovation in like an open way, and in as open way as possible that benefits people. And that's where the business side of things comes in. So I wanted to provide that duality of opportunity, which is start a business, make money for yourself, live a life on your own terms, which is something that I subscribe to, and also actually help people and don't rip people off and don't ruin the planet, and
right.
do the opposite, improve it. So that's where a lot of the profits of my business go into. A lot of my time goes into is developing and growing this community and figuring out creative ways to get people amped up about philanthropy, amped up about B Corps, and sending money and resources in the direction of those 12 categories that I mentioned, but in general, just areas of opportunity that everyday people like you and me, people who haven't started businesses yet, or people who've never volunteered before but have that desire, can be involved in a either a more virtual way or a way that kind of uses their skills. So that's where Sodality comes in, because right. we can have those conversations and everybody can come in and learn about it, but also contribute. And when you contribute, you start something big.
Right, that's great. So what is one of the technologies that you personally use in your life to better your own life?
I use AI a lot. And all of us do to a great extent, but for the most part,
very few realize.
Running a business is, especially early stage, you can utilize what's out there to a great extent. Like you mentioned, X.AI, and I have a couple of other programs that I mean, I get several hundred emails a day. Like I've got AI programs that are sifting through that automatically prioritize things. So that's a big area. I'm not involved with it directly, but space tech, I mean, I'm a huge follower of SpaceX, as many people are, and I eventually want to be in that industry. So educating myself on that is another big, commitment on my end.
Right. So what should somebody do who's like, let's say, at your situation in 2013, who maybe has just finished school or university and is looking to do something like you, to do better humanity, use technology, work with people that are of a similar mindset as they, who want to do their own thing? What can you recommend them to do? Like, one thing you already mentioned, to reach out to people who are where you already are. And I assume that you're open to having people get in touch with you, but what else can people do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my number one recommendation would be to find a local community in person where you can connect with somebody that's on your level. That is the number one thing that you can do. Like hands down, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what you do in terms of blogging or publishing of content or whatever. The return on your time is going to be 10 to 100x if you find a local meetup. It doesn't have to be a think tank. It could be, but anything that's kind of centered around technology or technology that you're passionate about. If you love blockchain and you love getting involved with cryptocurrency or applications of blockchain in other industries, then find a blockchain meetup. Go meet with somebody, talk to the organizer, and if you want to start taking a leadership role, then tell the organizer you'd love to give a talk. I mean, I've run multiple meetups, and I love when people do that because it makes my job easier. So they'll be appreciative of that as long as you have something that you can speak intelligently about. Which, if you're passionate about something, then you will. And a lot of people discount their own knowledge for no reason. So I would say self-awareness about what you know and passion can get you pretty far. By itself. Yes. You do need to know it. You do need to back up your excitement and your passion. Once at a certain point. But for the most part, use the passion and the knowledge that you have about a certain topic to join communities, build a network. Because it's not like the world is too complicated to take it on by yourself. It's just too big and too much is going on. It's exponential, and it's not going to stop. So surround yourself with passionate, motivated people, and you'll either come up with an idea to work with them on, from the get-go, or you can start another community like I did, or a small one, like have like a mastermind that you can start with like 5 or 10 people, and you meet up and or talk online like 2 or 3 times a month. But it's about the people. Right, it's about who you're surrounding yourself with, because there's like I said, too much going on to keep track of it as one person. But also, from a capacity standpoint, if you ever did want to start a business, like you're gonna want to have either advisors or partners or somebody that can help you fulfill whatever it is that you're building.
Right. And after all, we are apes in a way. We learn by imitating other people and absorbing by observation. Yeah. So if you're around people who have success in what you're trying to do, then you're going to be they're going to rub off on you, I think. Before we close, I have one more question for you. What is one habit that you're trying to establish right now?
I've been into biohacking recently, and so I've been measuring a lot of things, from sleep to nutrition to energy to exercise to all that kind of stuff. And one habit that I've been incorporating into my kind of daily ritual is a really strong morning routine. And I established it. Actually, that whole biohacking thing was born out of a Sodality accountability group. But for the most part, I've been very, very strict with my morning routines recently, and that has added an element of energy and productivity to my days. That's that I haven't experienced before. And now I'm moving on to the evening routines because I'm a night owl and I shouldn't be. I'll stay up too late, which will affect my mornings. Yes. So the more that I can systemize and get into like a ritual, the less I have to think about in the morning. Like, well, do I want to have coffee first, or do I want to, exercise, or what am I going to do this morning?
Decisions. Right.
Yeah, well, and we only have a certain amount of decision-making juice, for lack of a better term. That was a, right. That's been scientifically proven. So, if I can divert that juice in the most productive ways possible, not deciding between shower and coffee and workout, then I'll be better at my job and more motivated and more energetic.
Right. Yeah, I'm doing the same right now. I'm getting really serious about making sure that the morning goes a certain way, and then I experience the same effects. And I'm also trying this Fitbit thing, measuring a little bit how much activity you're doing. And right now, I'm not taking it too seriously, but often it's more starting with it, getting a intuitive feeling for it, and then sticking through it when you're.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts with that, right? It starts with like the qualitative stuff, and then like, do I feel good right now? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can get into the more quantitative stuff. But for the most part, that's how it starts for everybody. That's how it started for me.
Right. Yeah, and a book tip that I can give to everybody who's listening right now or watching is Dilbert. The Dilbert creator, Scott Adams, has written a book, I think, How to Fail at Nearly Everything and Still Win Big. And in it, he talks about using systems instead of passion. That passion is good, but systems is what will carry you further than anything. And that you need to set yourself up the right way to benefit from it. All right. Thanks, Dan, for your time. I'm sure we'll connect in the future again. And,
absolutely.
We'll see each other.
Thank you very much.
All right. Goodbye.
See ya.